All right, so JMaine and I are getting started on something here today for a little Hall of Fame podcast because we have maybe the best ballot FCM has ever had this year. So I thought maybe it's worth it to run through some of the names here for a little while and talk about who's on the ballot, JMaine and I's thoughts about whether they should be on the ballot or not, and just kind of hash those things out back and forth. So I got with me JMaine. You there, man?
What's up? What's up? Before we get started, my first thoughts, my eyes opened up when he said this is the best ballot ever. You think this is the best ballot ever?
It's hard to say no to that question because we have two guys on the ballot that could be Mount Rushmore candidates,
That's right.
and Danny Vines and Cantrell, and then there's a lot of depth right behind those two guys too. So yeah, it might be.
I would, yeah. I see what you're saying now. Definitely two Mount Rushmore, and hell, you could probably make the case for Cliff Miller too, even though I think he falls short. Is Cook on the Mount Rushmore? I haven't caught up on Mount Rushmore.
Luke Cook is. Yeah, Luke. He would be I think he might be the guy that would be replaced of the group. Like he's the low end, I would say. But I mean, I don't know if Cantrell makes that cut. I think some of his years here at the very end might have doomed him. But
well,
I mean, it's a solid group.
I would say somewhere GB is grinning over the Cantrell Luke Cook debate.
All right.
But yeah, no, overall solid group. Solid group. Personally, my ballots, I'm a little tougher, but I'm curious to hear yours.
Usually pretty tough, but I said it in the chat last night. I think I voted for 10 or 12 people. It felt like I was voting yes constantly.
I'm trying to date back because I already put my vote in, and I reopened the link. It doesn't tell your selections. But do you want to start revealing? Do you want to go through each one personally? You want to go through our personal ballots?
Oh, let's kind of go through each player that's on there. We can kind of start at the top. Some of them are going to be quick because they may or may not be guys that we even consider, thinking about or talking about a lot. But there are a few.
Yeah, we can start with Collins. We're at the top.
Yeah, Scott Collins is a guy that, he's been on the ballot, I think, 3 seasons now. He's a good player. He was one of the guys that I had to say no to just because of the quality of the rest of the ballot. How about you?
I said it was a quick no for me because he did not have the long career that you would like to see in the Hall of Famer. He definitely was on the disabled list for pretty much half of his career, and he had his peak was short-lived. And a statistic that might help voters, myself too, is if we could put the innings pitched. I actually never thought of that, but if we could put how many innings a certain pitcher had, that would be nice too. Because a guy like Scott Collins, I bet that he's got maybe 600 less innings than another guy like Bellotta or someone else, or maybe even more.
Scott Collins
he definitely was a good player though.
He pitched about 2,200 innings, which I can tell you is quite a bit less than a few of the other guys.
2,200. Okay, so
2,200 because if I remember right, I think Cliff Miller and Cantrell are up over 3,000. So yeah.
Right there alone tells you that he had a short career. It was a good career, but a good short career. You need a little bit of longevity to get to the Hall of Fame status.
If I were to give a yes vote for Collins, there's a couple reasons to do it. I mean, he had 13 seasons, and you can probably bet, you take off the back end of his career when he probably died off, and the front end when he's a rookie. And he's pretty much an all-star every season he was a significant pitcher in the file, which is pretty impressive. And then
that's impressive.
Against is a solid number for him. 227 is really good. And his ERA is not bad either. I mean, I think in an average ballot, he'd get a lot more consideration. He probably
but I think most voters want to see more than just their main peak. His peak was 65 to 74, a 10-year stretch, or it was less than 10 years. Past that, he was just bouncing around teams. He had one bounce back year with the Royals, but he was out of the league at 34. And I don't think he was dominant enough to just say, oh, first ballot Hall of Fame or whatever Hall of Famer at all.
Right.
I would need to see like Lou Cook. I would need to see Cantrell for 10 years. I didn't see that out of Collins. He was good. He was good. He just
They did
wasn't
have.
a,
I mean, his
like he never
2016. Go ahead.
he wasn't a Cy Young guy. Even though awards doesn't really mean as much to me. But he was, you know,
68 season.
he was there. He had a good career, but he's not
Yeah.
a Hall of good. I wouldn't even say very good. Hall of
And I
good.
have this discussion a lot too, where he likes to focus on, what was their peak like, and I try to look at. For me, it's more of a combination of peak and longevity, and he just didn't have the longevity of even his peak to make him a Hall of Famer in my book. Right there, though, he's just outside of it, but I would probably not.
Yeah, and I don't know the history of Scott Collins. So, do you know his percentages in the past?
I think he's been in like the 40-50% range.
Wow, he's been getting a little bit of love.
I think I voted yes for him once or twice. I mean, he's not that far away. Let's put it this way: there are guys in the Hall of Fame that he is better than. So,
but they had a longer longevity, which is a little bit backwards. And maybe
they had
could be
good
better than
timing
some
when they
Hall of
were on a
Famers.
ballot. Last year he had 40%. This is actually his last try. So
Okay,
I'm
curious to see. I think he's going to fall short. I think he falls short, especially with the crowded ballot like this. Even though we don't have any limits to votes, I think he falls short. Owen Houston. This is his first year, second year. Second year, it looks like.
Last year was his first year, and he had 50% of the vote to get in. So he didn't actually come all that close. And I know you've discussed him a couple times. He's been one of your guys that you've kind of put on that. Is he or is he not a Hall of Fame?
Yeah, fringe. Definitely fringe. Yeah. Definitely fringe.
Peter and I were talking about him a little bit this morning because Peter was talking about Vilma eventually being on the ballot, and I was comparing Vilma to Houston, and they are relatively close. So, kind of the decision you make with Houston might be something you'd have to consider with a couple other guys coming down the pipeline here too.
Yes, and ultimately, my decision was no. I said no on Houston. Hall are very good, the way I looked at them. 3.47 ERA, just over 200 wins, even though wins isn't really that big of a deal to me. I feel like if you're going to categorize starting pitchers in the Hall of Fame, I need to see like the best of the best. I want to see Cy Youngs. I want to see 12, 14 years of dominance. And it could be he could be at fault because I win in the league with Lou Cook, Arrington in the league. Trying to name other greats, but who else am I missing? Cantrell, obviously, and Miller. Like I don't see Owen Houston in that category with them. So I think he's like in that B or maybe even C category. So he's always been a fringe guy to me, and it might be because his years after 32 weren't that great. That could be it. He didn't pad the stats when he was a little bit older, but ultimately, I'm saying no.
Here's my thing with him. He's your classic number 3 pitcher that JMaine likes to roll out there. He's not good at K-ing people. He just limits walks. He limits home runs. He's not sexy. He just gets it done behind a good defense. But
that's also the question, do we want a Hall of Fame of aces or do we want a Hall of Fame of 1, 2s, and 3s? So if Owen Houston's your classic 3, then in my book, he had a great career, but he doesn't belong in the Hall of Fame. You know what I'm getting at?
No, I do. He was a valuable pitcher without being a Hall of Famer.
Without question. He was a great pitcher. I had him on the team for the last 3 seasons.
And I voted no for him also. I don't quite think he's there. But I think, again, he's right there. He's in that next tier outside of the Hall of Fame.
And I haven't looked at the whole starting pitcher list, but he might be better than some Hall of Famers. But
he is.
Some Hall of Famers may not have deserved to be in the Hall of Fame.
Right.
And the next guy, Belota, I struggled. I was back and forth with him too.
I think a lot of people struggle with him.
I struggle with him.
He's one of my guys in Cincinnati, and I struggle with whether or not he should be in there.
What did you do? Did you vote?
I voted no.
Did you vote him in?
because I don't see him as being all that separated from Houston and Collins. He was elite, and for a stretch there, he was really elite, and then he just died off early.
Right.
And I saw that coming with him when I was managing Cincinnati. It's one of the reasons why, I was actively looking for pitchers, because I saw that he was not going to last long. And he didn't. He had a short window.
I think
high on base against. That doesn't favor him very well. He doesn't K people. He was just really, really, really good at not allowing home runs.
Yeah, he had a solid career. Obviously, he was good with the Big Red Machine. I actually voted yes on him, and he was like the yes, no, I don't know, yes, okay, fine, type guy. Probably I could be biased because I was against him all these years.
I like Houston. He's a guy who, I don't know if he's an ace, but he's a guy, if you put the right team around him in the right place, he can give you a hell of a performance most years.
I will say, I think Bellotta is probably a Hall of Famer due to the team and environment he was in. He was in a winning situation every single year. And not only just a winning situation, like a dominant situation, being with studs. That could hurt his stock, but I mean, I'm looking at Bellotta and Houston, like looking at them evenly, and that's probably wrong of me. But I went yes. It was like a hesitant yes though. I said yes, probably because he was in my division. I played against him. So
right. For me, he just wasn't quite there. Especially when I compare him to a couple of the names coming up on the list. Especially the next guy coming up on the list.
Yes, Toledano.
I look at Toledano and I go,
I know you love him.
Yep. I mean,
he's your guy.
We can have 2 times during this pod where we talk about guys JMaine traded in his first stint in Milwaukee that he probably regrets.
Yeah, maybe.
And Toledano is a stud. He's a Hall of Famer in my book. No question about it.
See, the thing about Toledano, I don't know. I voted yes on him, by the way. Yes, you crowned the strikeouts. He was a dominant strikeout artist. I wouldn't say dominant strikeout artist. There have been better strikeout artists. But
our file, he was pretty high end.
He's had some Cy Young years. He's had some above average years. And he's had some good years. He's got like a weird resume. And he's had some like sneaky longevity. I usually I think power pitchers die off at like 30. He had a solid career post 30 for a strikeout guy, because usually ground ball guys translate well after 30. You could like put him in the right situation, give him like a G Money style defense, and he comes up with 16 wins. Toledano, he bounced around from different teams, still had success.
That's what I look at. I mean, that on base against the 222, that is freaky good. I mean, that would stack up maybe in top 5 or 6 players in our Hall of Fame, which means basically
I voted yes. He was
on base on him.
He is the embodiment of a great number 2. He was always behind Velasquez all the years in Houston, and that's how you're gonna look at him. He's a Houston guy, obviously. He was always number 2 to Velasquez, and I think he's a Hall of Famer.
Anchored a staff as an ace, in my opinion. And he had some years, man. That 2070 season where he went 22-3, people got on base against him at a lower than 200 clip, struck out 210 guys. He was ridiculously good. And the other thing with him too is Houston was rebuilding for most of his first 7 or 8 years in the game. It wasn't really until the late 60s that Houston kind of came up. I'm sure.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, they were like creeping up. It was like a progression build.
I remember
I think they came up around 68, 69 maybe. Well, I can actually just look at their playoff. So 68 was their first appearance in that era. 68. And yeah, it was a little bit of a steady climb. So yeah, he went through 4 years and change.
Was basically on a rebuilding team still and was pumping out the wins. So, he I think he's a surefire Hall of Famer. You don't see many guys in our file that can strike out that many batters and keep batters off base. And he was pretty good against limiting home runs as well. So, he pretty much does all the things that we look at and go, that's what I want in my pitcher.
Okay, so let me ask you this, Andy. What is your criteria of a Hall of Fame pitcher?
No, I want to think of them as they're in the conversation for a Cy Young every year. Like if I were making a list of pitchers going into a year, and I think these are guys that are legit Cy Young candidates, they should have been on that list for a big chunk of their career. And I think Toledano's.
So are you looking at their peak prime?
Yeah, and they have to have the longevity to back it up too.
Okay.
It can't be like you're a badass for 3 years and then you go away. Like you've got to sustain some dominance too. And for about a decade there, from about 2066 to 2076, Toledano was probably one of the top pitchers in our file. But he got overlooked a lot because Velázquez was right there in front of him.
That's right.
So, but let's be honest here. Velázquez is an all-timer, like automatic, no thought required to put him into the Hall. Whereas Toledano's
we've all discussed this of who's like in the top tier category of no doubt Hall of Famers. If you vote no for him, then you have a problem.
Right. Toledano's not that guy, but he's definitely in. He would walk into our Hall of Fame and easily be in the upper half of the pitchers in the Hall.
Which I'm looking ahead here. I think GB mentioned that if he didn't re-sign him, he's going to retire. So I'm assuming he has re-signed with Detroit.
He did. So otherwise, we might have had Velázquez on this ballot also.
Which would have been, woo-hoo. You would have had a whole rotation bullpen, and
you could field a team with this ballot and be pretty good.
You would have a JV All-Star rotation.
Yeah, you really would. You pretty much have every position covered to varying degrees. Now your center fielder might be a little crappy compared, but like this is a good group. But we can talk about the next guy, Ricardo Zimez. I voted no.
Yeah, I think it's easy now. But I was shocked at how long he lasted in the bigs. He and funny because Zimez was part of the Cantrell deal in Atlanta, and I remember debating and on the FCM trade rumors that who won the deal, and obviously Detroit won the deal, but Zimez had a pretty impressive career himself, and he's easy to forget because I think he was on I'm not looking at his card right now. Let me see if I can find his player card. But I'm gonna guess without looking at his card, I'm gonna guess he was on 7 teams. I'm gonna guess 7 teams because I think it was on.
It was closer to 10.
It's closer. All right, let me see here. 1,
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
18. Oh, what's the 19?
Oh no, Detroit. I counted
Detroit. Yeah. So 8 teams. Wow. He bounced around.
He did, but his final numbers look pretty good.
Yes. He was like your classic innings eater type player. If we're comparing him to real life player, he was like the solid Mark Burley. I don't know.
We talked about how Collins only managed to put up 2,200 innings. Zim has put up 3,500.
3,500. My goodness.
Pretty good. So I think he deserves a ballot, but not a spot in the Hall.
See, that's why I want to see innings pitch because that number right there, that's impressive. Innings pitch. How many innings did these guys log? How much? You said 2,200 for Collins?
Yeah, and 3,500 for Zimez.
No, sorry, 2,200 for Collins.
22 for Collins.
22 for Collins. Wow.
Oh,
that alone is impressive. He's
it's definitely durability.
It's like Jack Morris right here. This guy.
Right.
Speaking
of 3,500 innings, we should probably spend some time on the next guy because Gerard Cantrell also put up 3,500 innings in his career, almost 3,600 innings. And
yeah, there's not much to talk
anything.
About.
But here's the thing, and one of the reasons why I wanted to do this podcast, because we can talk about all of Cantrell's amazing accomplishments, but one of the things that also doesn't go on the ballot is this guy pitched 300 postseason innings and had an ERA of 2.89 and struck out 200 guys in those innings, went 18-13. Like he had an entire season and a half just as a damn playoff pitcher that we're not even counting towards his record.
Yeah, playoffs in my view
25
is just a bonus. He had a great postseason resume, obviously.
Well, it's part of the legacy, I think.
I don't weigh the postseason stuff, heavy in the selection process, but it is like a bonus to me. It's like, oh, okay, he was really dominant in the postseason. But if you're gonna take
as part of my vote either, but I love the legacy part of it.
Yeah,
because,
yeah.
Like a guy like I'm trying to think of somebody who was really good for a long time but didn't have any kind of postseason impact. Those you tend to forget. But when GB says I'm rolling Cantrell for the next playoff game, everybody sits up and goes, "Oh shit!" Like I hope I don't have to face that.
I think that's what gets you into the Mount Rushmore, something like that.
I mean, Lou Cook was definitely that guy. You knew if you were going up against Lou Cook that you were probably boned.
And it's funny because there's a guy later in this list that I did something backwards in the playoffs. I was going against Cliff Miller, and I didn't go with my ace. I didn't go with my ace because I was like, I didn't want to, and I almost won the series, but I almost tanked that game or tried to steal one with my number 5 starter just so I could save my ace for the next game.
Before we get to Miller, Cantrell, he the only thing really holding him back for me for talking about him as one of the all-timers is that his win total just isn't what you'd expect with how dominant he was, right? Like he's a clear Hall of Famer, not questioning him at all. Now we're just talking how elite was he? And boy, for as he is, you wish he could have gotten to 300 wins.
I think wins are garbage.
Yeah,
wins are garbage.
I know that they're
wins are determined by your team and how your team performs, not by how you pitch.
Unfortunately, at the end of the day, though, we judge them on a variety of things that are outside their control too. But I don't know if it makes him better than I know you weren't in the league during primetime G's era or Donovan Pace. Those guys were ridiculous, and some of their counting stats blow Cantrell out of the water, which I know might make people.
Yeah, I gotta take a look. I've definitely heard of him now. I know Pace has got crazy records.
Pace was a beast, and then you look back at primetime G. That was his nickname. That was D. Lee's guy in Philadelphia. Primetime G. He had 3 Cy Youngs. He pitched 3,800 innings in his career, won 309 games, on base against of 212, struck out 9 guys per 9 innings. He was a stud, just an absolute stud. And it's hard for me to be I think Cantrell was better because I just can't say that. The fact that he put up 60 more wins and an extra 300 innings is really impressive.
And if you look,
this is even more.
I mean, I can't tell you before 2060, but the best 1-2 punch, Cantrell and Cook, and you could just go back and forth on who was number 1, who was number 2.
They probably were the best 1-2 punch I've seen in the file.
Best 1-2, you'd say? Because you obviously know better than me.
I can't think of anybody. Yeah. I mean, there's a few others in our history that we've had, early on. Hokie had Donovan Pace and Brett Hunter. They were pretty good together. But after that, I don't know who the next combo I would even put up there. Toledano and Velkasquez.
That's pretty solid. Miller and nah.
There were 2 guys in LA for a little while, D-Train, DeMont Williams, and some pitch to contact motherfucker who was just like Bilotti. I don't remember what his name was now. I want to say it was Toby something, but there was a combo in LA there for a little while too. But
I think I'll be safe taking Cantrell and Cook. I think Cook was I think Cook was Pedro Martinez, by the way. If you look at that,
he was
numbers side by side.
It's a credit to Cantrell talking about him in the conversation with guys like that. It's just if I were looking at the 4 guys on our Mount Rushmore, I can't bump any of them. Arrington was a monster also.
Yes, Arrington had like the best longevity of anyone, right?
His innings pitched are right up there with Donovan Pace. He had 4,500 innings pitched.
4,500. My goodness.
And he won 356 games. So he won 100 more games than Gerard Cantrell did. Just to put that in context.
Okay. With
To me, Cantrell's a lock Hall of Famer, but he probably doesn't crack the Mount Rushmore.
It's a tough vote. That's a tough. That's
a tough group to crack. Let's just be frank about that. That group is going to be tough to crack.
Yeah. You have to take a special talent to, and you have to be like 45 with dominance. I don't know, to crack that list. Mark Smith.
Yeah, I don't know if we need to talk much about him. I don't think he's a Hall of Famer. He was just a really good pitcher.
He was the bottom guy of the fringe list I kind of came up with. He just needed like a late, mid-30s push, and he just never got that. So I said no, but he had a very solid, consistent career. Basically, as a 3 or 4 starter with Washington. Good career. Nothing that really stands out, but a good career. All of it.
I think both of us are on the same page about Cliff Miller. I mean, he's clearly a Hall of Famer, I think.
Yeah, I try to avoid his ass.
Right. Yet another guy,
motherfucker.
Yet another guy, just like Cantrell, who had 300 innings pitched in the playoffs. But here's the thing with Cliff Miller: he went 28-7 in the playoffs. 28-7.
That's stupid.
If you look at the playoff record, most years he only lost 2 playoff games his first 6 years in the file. Then he had a rough one in 2071. But for the most part, you could roll him out there and just be like, yep, good luck. And I got lucky with Cliff Miller. He was a guy that I targeted from PR.
Yep.
I've made no joke or no hesitation about this. I've been crappy at drafting pitchers for a while. And I had a guy on Cincy when I took them over in Shockley, an outfielder who was a switch hitter, played pretty well for PR for a couple of years. And I just said, give me 2 upside pitchers. You tell me who you want to give me, PR. And he gave me Miller and some other guy that ended up being a washout. But I targeted Miller because PR was a hell of a guy at drafting pitchers. Like, say whatever else you want about PR, that dude knew how to draft pitchers. So basically, I just got lucky in that one of the 2 guys he gave me did the old PR pan out. I don't know how.
The old PR pan out.
He was some of the years Cliff Miller posted were really ridiculous, including one when he was 36 with GB. I don't know if he took steroids in 2077, but Cliff Miller in 2077 should have been tested for steroids every other day. I don't know where that season came from.
That was probably my most impressive part about Cliff Miller, that he had a great run in Detroit. That almost set him in the conversation of, is he Mount Rushmore? I don't think he is at the end of the day, but he sustained dominance till he was 38. That was awesome when he did in Detroit.
I thought he was done
3 years.
Go ahead.
Perfect there.
I thought GB was just doing his normal pitcher retirement home thing, and it was just going to kind of, slowly peter out. But the dude had.
No one anticipated 22-3 year one. No one, especially after the rough 76 that he had. And great, Cincinnati had a rough. They were in the backstage of their run in 75, 76. But I did not see that sort of bounce back.
He would have won a Cy Young at that point is crazy. I can't believe that happened. And GB didn't pay a lot for him. He paid him $10 million a year, and he got a Cy Young winner out of it.
Yeah, I do remember that. Is there a list of oldest Cy Young winners?
No, I wouldn't even know how we'd be able to track that down. We'd have to basically go year by year and see who won. Okay. I have a list of who the Cy Young winners were, and we could probably glance at that and try to guess. But
do you know any old yellers who won?
Maybe Donovan Pace, because he won Cy Youngs. So it's possible he won those later in his career. I can see. I don't know how much pace is even in this thing anymore.
Because I'm sure Clip Miller's right there, 1 or 2.
Yeah, I would say the only guy that I think might have a shot at that would be Pace, because how late into his life he pitched. He had a long career, but it's definitely up there. And let's face it, like we said before, anybody heard, like you said, you heard Miller time in the playoffs, and it was time to run away from him, which is you got a strategy for that.
I don't want to admit that, but I literally thought, I said, this is my Cinderella moment. I have to run away from this guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
I think, and didn't you beat him in game 2 and then lose to him in game 5? Is that how that worked?
What happened was, I think it was game 1 and I lost. No surprise. And yeah, I lost in game 5, but in game 5, it was my, maybe not my ace, but I had someone for game 5 that was way better than the game 1 starter. Basically, I saved my pitcher for game 2 and 5. I don't know.
I don't know what year that was.
It was 73, I believe it was. I could go back, but I specifically
so it looks
remember.
like he started 2 games and went 1-0 that year. But yeah,
I think game 5.
Interesting strategy.
It almost worked.
Next on our list is a guy I don't think we have to spend a lot of time on. I put him on there because he's been a valuable player in our file, and that's Mel Jackson. But he just doesn't have the saves or the other credentials he needs to be a high-end Hall of Fame type guy.
Yeah, same here. Nothing really to be said. The only time I really do look at wins and losses, just as a kind of reference, is in relief pitchers. I want to see, does he blow games? Does he lose games? Because that's, 9th inning, whatever. You lose games. That's a black eye to your resume. Mel Jackson was the most dependable, but he had a good long career as being a above average to pretty good reliever. But that's all he is.
Out there. I forgot to put the saves total on there. He had about 350 saves, which just quite frankly, to even think about being a Hall of Famer in my book. Moving on to the hitters, we've got Tice. Do I need to share my thoughts on Joe Tice? Have I
think
that enough?
I think you were the bus driver of the Joel Tice hate brigade. You hated that guy for forever, even when I picked him up.
even if you don't hate him, he's not a Hall of Famer, right? Like, even if you appreciate
no, he's not.
It's just not quite there.
He's not there offensively. He's definitely not there defensively.
Right. If he was a really good defensive player, well, then we might be able to have a conversation. But he wasn't. So I don't really see him as a Hall of Famer.
Oh man, I'm trying to remember some names that I would compare him to if he had the defense. Shoot. It was like recent guys who had like good careers, fringe Hall of Famers. Crap, I can't remember their names. Like one was.
One of the advantages he has is that he's a third baseman, and
I think Gladthorne was one of them.
Yeah, Gladthorne's a good player.
Yeah, I'm like, as a comparison, like I thought Gladthorne was like a fringe Hall of Famer, and Joel Tice like kind of has those kind of numbers, but if you compare it to, Tice doesn't even come close with the defense.
I feel like Gladthorne made it in. Yeah, Gladthorne.
There's someone else too. There's a couple other guys.
I know, like Gentinetta, the Gentinetta guy that Jeep rolling out there at second base the last couple of years.
No, not that guy. I'm gonna look over. He was like on. There was like 3 or 4 of them who you could like kind of compare him to.
He's definitely not in Gladthorne's conversation. Because Gladthorne was a defensive player who hit almost 450 home runs. So
that's not the guy I'm thinking of, though.
Yeah, he can't hold his jock.
Mitch Meacham. That's the guy.
Oh, Meacham. Yeah, Meacham, though, you can actually say was really good for a little while. He just, like, his career just didn't have a long life to it.
Yeah, I think the body of work, I think they're very similar. But Meacham is just better defensively. Not that great defensively, but he's just better than Tice overall. But Meacham was like that fringe guy.
Tice just never was a rock star part of your lineup. Meacham, for a little while there, was everyone's wet dream for a cleanup hitter. Because he was just a monster for a few years. Tice was always that guy that people are like, oh, he should be pretty good. And then they put him in their lineup, and they realize, no, I think I want to hit him 8, and that's kind of his life.
Joel Tice, forever a thorn in the Brewers' history and everyone else's.
Montez Robinson is an interesting guy. If Maddie listens to this, he'll recognize this callback. Colorado had a guy way back in the days when Maddie was running Colorado, named I think his name was Jose Rabina, and Montez Robinson reminds me a lot of that guy. His doubles total is crazy good. His home run total is not so great, and I think that's what ultimately will sink him.
Montez Robinson, I voted no for him. He had a good. I'm trying to pull up his player card. I remember him in Houston. He had some good. Did he win an MVP? I'm trying to remember if he won MVP.
No, he didn't.
I think he did. He did. He did.
Did not. He was a rookie of the year, but he was not an MVP winner. He never really.
He was just
MVP season.
He was just a consistent player for about 10 years and then faded away. I don't think he was even Hall of Fame worthy to be on the ballot. I think I've seen better first baseman, but he had a good career. Consistent, 20 home runs, 100 runs batted in for 10 years, and that's it. Nothing too sexy. Nothing too sexy about his game.
He was just a good
lefty.
Yeah,
he was just a good lefty first baseman for 10 years.
He was
all-star
defensively. He wasn't great, but he was solid. I think he deserved it just on the basis of, almost 500 doubles is an impressive achievement. But he's going to have a hard time on a ballot winning a Hall of Fame berth when the guy after him is also on the ballot.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Cut you off there.
No, go ahead.
No, I was going to say Montez Robinson will have the same view as what's his name? The Brett Marshall. They kind of had the same sort of resume. High doubles, about 300 homers. I don't think Robinson makes it. I don't think Marshall makes it. 2 good careers. They're not your wet dream of your 3 and 4 hitter types.
I will give Marshall this. I was really down on Marshall, and he might prove me wrong because he's 37 and still churning out halfway decent seasons. Like, he might prove me wrong that maybe he does end up in the Hall of Fame. He wouldn't be a guy I want, but he's starting to churn up the counting stats that make it at least possible.
I'll have to look at him very closely, and he does have a couple more years in him, so we'll definitely see. He's definitely a step up from Robinson. But that was the first guy I saw with the doubles, with the hits, blah, 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 blah. But yeah, no on Robinson. Dan Vines, what'd you think? No? You didn't think so?
Man, I was sad that he couldn't make 600. He got closer than I thought, because a couple years ago, I basically gave him no chance at 600 home runs.
I remember giving him the hot take that he would.
Yeah.
He ended up with 547. I thought there was a glimmer of hope after that 35 homer season at age 36, but he kind of fell on his face in Toronto, and that was it for him. He was done. He was cooked.
Here's the way to look at it. In our file all time, he's number 2 in home runs. Only Sean Vogel hit more home runs than Dan Vines.
So we could both agree that he is going into the Mount Rushmore. Not even Hall of Fame. He's going to Mount Rushmore.
We can talk about who he would supplant then, because again, he's 3rd all time in guys behind Tim Van Dyke and Vogel. He's in the runs scored. It doesn't look like it, but in those 2 power categories, he's basically untouched. Now, if we look at Mount Rushmore, the guy he would probably have to kick off is Steve Miller, who was the first baseman for the Cincinnati, also a Cincinnati Red first baseman. You pull him up just for comparison.
Now, would you take out someone who is like Vines or like a power?
Consider Steve Miller the bottom end of those 4 players. Dean Thorpe as a catcher, I'm not sure how knocks him off that list. Jeff Hainsworth might.
Might.
Peter Carson had like 3,500 hits. He's not going anywhere. And Sean Vogel had 600 home runs. Conversation over. So
Man, can we make a Mount Rushmore like JV team? Like, I don't know. Can we have like a I don't know, something just to see who's like right behind him?
I don't know. Yeah, we could like runners up. Yeah, I don't know. I think Steve Miller gets booted. Now, here's where Steve Miller has an advantage. He was a better fielder than Dan Vines, a significantly better fielder. He was a gold glove caliber, high end defensive first baseman. Um, he also hit over 500 home runs. He hit 514. He had 400 doubles, 1,600 RBI, and he had a career 946 OPS. So he was no slouch either. He actually had a better career OPS than Dan Vines.
You said 946 OPS, which is better than Vines.
And Dan had 910. Now, where Vines has an advantage is that he's a 7-time MVP winner, which is
more than world championships.
Right.
Ah.
No one can compare to that stat. Like, no, he is the only one who's ever done that. So it's tough. I lean towards keeping the one-man band on there, but it's really hard.
It's hard not to see Dan Vines in that list. Which gets me to think.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to say we need a all 70s team discussion, by the way. We did the all 60s. We need an all 70s team.
Because I've been here from day one, I remember the one-man band and how good he was. And I believe that was a JPS guy. Hopefully he can confirm that for us at some point, but I'm pretty sure he was. And JPS had a pretty badass Cincinnati team way back in the day. He had a couple of Hall of Famers on that team. Marv Eason, I think, is one of our third basemen in the Hall. And the one-man band was to the file what Vines was for a while. And so some of it is sentiment that, like, I kind of like the one-man band being on there because he was so good for so long. But those two guys are like neck and neck. So,
You know, it'd be cool if we had. I know Mount Rushmore 4. I get it. If we could have like the top dog for each position. You know, Steve Miller first base, Dean Thorpe catcher, Sean Vogel second base, Romanis at shortstop. I'm just saying the name. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Third base, someone. Just give me like a roster. Let's get a roster.
I mean, if I were to do it right now, Vogel would probably be the shortstop because he did play shortstop too. Okay. I'd have to get like second and third and see Jose Vargas as a third baseman might be in that conversation. Jay Sullivan, the shortstop, he might be in that. Danny Dudding was really good. I don't know. It'd be hard to pick between some of these guys. Barter Hearn was a beast for a while there.
Yep.
Not a guy you wanted to mess with. And then, I mean, if you were to do that all-time team, Miller and Vines would be splitting first base and DH. That's probably what would be happening.
That's fair.
Figure out the rest of it after that.
And, Vines didn't really kick the ball at first base. He wasn't a gold glover. He didn't kick the ball. But, yeah, he would be a DH.
No, he was fine. He could field his position, but Miller was better in the field.
He was the guy who won the hardware, huh? Okay.
Yeah, he had 3 gold gloves, and he was a good first baseman. So, I mean, Vines is a lock. We're kind of having the same conversation with him that we did with Cantrell. Like, how elite is he? Because he's elite. And that's pretty much the end of that.
I was really hoping for 600. I was really hoping.
Was too. Because Vogel, I'm still kind of proud of Vogel making 600. I love looking at that stat every now and then. He's the only guy that shows up in the all-time records list. So I kind of dig that every time I see it. But
that's amazing.
I want to talk a little bit about, there are 3 guys left on this list that I want to spend some time on because I want to pitch their Hall of Fame credentials. And I think this next guy is the guy who's getting the least amount of love. He deserves more love. And that's Aaron Stanley. Where did you stand on him?
Yeah, Stanley was a guy. I vote yes for him. He was not only a home run threat, he was the best right fielder in the game. I think he won. It didn't say he won Gold Gloves, but he should have won Gold Gloves because he was that good in right field. He didn't really hit for much. He was like a one-trick pony type guy. but every time he hit the ball, it was over the fence. So he did that pretty elite. Nearly got to 500. I think he's a lock Hall of Famer in my eyes. Maybe not
I
a
do
lock,
too.
but I do believe he's. I do believe. See, lock is like Dan Vines. I think Stanley, does struggle a little bit to get in. So I would take back the lock statement. But I think he's a Hall of Famer nonetheless. I just don't think he's a lock. I think people should look at him a little bit closer and realize that he's not only just a power threat, he was a superior fielder, and that's big.
That's the hard thing to look at. Is it's hard to look at, was he a good fielder? You can't really post information about that in the file, but that's where I want to make the pitch is that, yeah, you look at his player card, he was ridiculous for what, about a 6-year stretch there in the mid 60s. And then he kind of petered out and was basically a 30 home run, 80 RBI guy for the rest of his career. But in addition to being a 30 home run, 90 RBI guy, he was basically a cannon armed Vladimir Guerrero in the outfield. Like, how many people are going to turn down, like, no, I don't want my right fielder to be Vladimir Guerrero and give me 30 bombs and 90 RBIs? That's what he was. Like, he was a left-handed Vlad for all intents and purposes. He didn't, some of his counting stats are not great. He didn't get to 2,000 hits. He did just miss the 500 home run mark. He didn't hit a ton of doubles. He only hit 300 of them. His OPS was 850, so it's not super amazing, and he only hit 250 for a batting average. But again, almost 500 home runs and a Gold Glove caliber outfielder who managed to win an MVP. He was a 3-time All-Star. He won 4 championships. I guarantee if you ask GB how important he was, he would say he was really important. And he was really important in Cincinnati, too.
It's impressive, his longevity. I thought he might have been cooked after his run in LA. He just put up consistent average to above average, playing superior defense and right numbers. And I think he's a Hall of Famer. He's going to be with Greg Watson, who's doing the same thing.
It's a good comp.
And Watson's still going. I mentioned in chat today that if I'm trying to win and I just need a right fielder, I'm signing Greg Watson. But Aaron Stanley was that guy. GB wanted a good right fielder. Boom. Got Aaron Stanley 4 years. Got, nearly 30 home run average per year.
I agree. I think
last was 40. Oof.
I think he should be getting more love. Maybe he misses out. But I have voted yes for him every single ballot, and I would encourage people to, when they look at his stats, just remember this guy could field like a motherfucker. So just keep in mind how good he was in the outfield, and he could also play a little bit of center field and first base for teams too. He wasn't just a right fielder. It's just that's where people tended to put him because of his hitting profile
and speed, probably. But yeah, I definitely look at his defense as a great bonus to his resume. And there's nothing you could put there next. You can't just say good fielder. You don't really have besides a Gold Glove, but can't really show that he was a good fielder in the resume. You just gotta remember that type of stuff.
Yeah, and that's where it makes it hard for people. And I know that it's just there's just no way to do it. The next two guys, I think we can kind of bunch together. You've got Rick Curtin and Moore. They're on there because of their stolen base totals and the fact that they were pretty high-end defensive center fielders. But I don't think either one are Hall of Famers.
I agree. Blaine Moore is actually a superior defender. I think the best defender I've seen since my tenure here was Cliff Holly. But Blaine Moore, I remember looking at his profile over the years and being so impressed by his defensive work. But he didn't hit for shit. Blaine Moore,
he was just Corey's had some bad luck with some guys who looked so good and then just mogul and neutered them, like just mercilessly neutered them.
It's weird because he had such a long career. Like I call him a bust. I think he's a bust. Like you were unlucky with the guy like Blaine Moore, but it was kind of impressive that he still rode out there, and put up the numbers that he did. But it's like one of those like what could have been for Blaine Moore. because I thought he was a good player coming out.
So did I. I thought Corey has had bad luck, and I would have made the same picks he did. He's just had crappy luck.
And as for Curtin, he was a good player, like the type of guy that most teams want, but he wasn't elite. Like if I'm looking at his profile and saying, okay, I want a Hall of Famer, I'm looking at Washington's Legionnaire. I'm looking at Vizcaya. Those are my two so far.
Yeah.
I might be missing someone here, but those are the main two I'm thinking of.
No,
Rick Curtin Rick Curtin's not in that category.
The poor man's version of those players. Absolutely.
Yes. Yeah. And for that, I just, that was a quick note for me. And I don't think he's got the longevity. 13 seasons. He was quickly out of the league.
So this next guy is where you get to redeem yourself, JMaine. So after you gave up on him the first time, tell me I'm not crazy. David Horn should have been a first ballot Hall of Famer, right?
I voted yes. I don't know about first ballot though. Let me get back to you on that.
I guarantee if we had Rocky on the phone right now and we said, how important was David Horn to your run there in Boston? He would have said he was pretty much like top one or two guys along with Sam McCluskey. McCluskey and Horn might have been the best 1-2 combo in a lineup we've ever seen.
In the bash and dash model?
Yeah, well, McCluskey wasn't a basher. McCluskey was one of those.
No, he was the all-around player.
He was the Swiss Army knife guy.
Yes.
My first run in Toronto, I had a combination like that in PMAC and some international free agent guy. But David Horn and McCluskey were ridiculous for Boston. And I think if you look back at his numbers, he's like a poor man's Bart Ahern. And that's pretty good.
Yeah.
He's a high-end defensive shortstop for most of his run, too.
No, well, Horn's a second
and
baseman.
Defensive
Horn's
second baseman.
shortstop.
My bad. Yeah, second baseman.
First ballot. I struggle with that, but I would say yes. He had a very good career.
You got to compare.
Very good career. He was always wanted by teams. He was wanted by Washington. He was wanted by Baltimore. He was elite in Boston. He had a good overall career.
Do you consider Bart Ahern pretty much a guaranteed first ballot Hall of Famer?
I remember voting him yes.
Yeah.
With the 3,000 hits and
David Horn's numbers, other than longevity, pretty much line up with Ahern. The only difference between Horn and Ahern is that Ahern managed to do it for 20 seasons and Horn only did it for 17. That's essentially the difference between those two players. Horn actually had a higher OPS than Ahern did.
No, Horn was a threat. He was there for years, and sad he couldn't go in as a Brewer. I know. One day we'll all move on, Andy. One day, just one day.
Well, I'm pitching this because right now Horn is right on the edge. He's one of the guys who's like, he's flirting with that 75%. And I just want to throw that out to people. Like, Boston would not have been as dominant as they were back in the day if it wasn't for Horn. And I can't remember what other pit stops he made along the way, but ask Peter. Peter had Horn for a little while, and I think he'll tell you too how much he made a difference in Washington.
Oh yeah, he was like their big chip to make that World Series. I believe they won in '71, so he was the chip. He was the engine right there.
He was the one that put Peter over the top that year. Absolutely. So I don't think I don't think it'd be overstated how important a leadoff hitting middle infielder can make a difference for your team. If you can legitimately put them at the top of your batting order and count on their defense, that is a valuable player. So
I'll tell you one thing now. He wasn't really ready for October. Ooh. My goodness.
Looking at his postseason stats.
Not good.
No, he was not good. You were right about that. He was a bad player.
A little cold in October in Boston, huh?
Oh, that reminds me of something I was going to bring up with. I know I'm cycling back here for a second, but just for there's somebody else listening. Never mind. I was looking at something else. So yeah, that's just my pitch, man. Horny should be in there. Put the horn dog in. So, and actually, I think the next two guys we can kind of talk about at the same time. What did you think about these two catchers, Whitelaw and Sedelis?
My first question is, what I gotta look at who is representing the catcher's, wing, because I bet it's a weak one. If you don't have your Thorpes in there, Whitelaw is
it was weak until the last like 5 seasons.
Until I guess the guy from Florida, what's his name?
Dean Thorpe. Really, our catcher wing had 2 guys in it for most of its existence. And then we put in Wilson Brown from Cincy, Dean Thorpe from Florida, Hank Eldred from Seattle, Aguilar from Pittsburgh, and then DeMichael Thomas.
Aguilar, yeah.
Also ridiculous.
So as for Whitelaw, great offensive stats. He was not a defensive catcher. I wish he threw out more than the 24% of his runners. Great longevity too. He was part of some great G teams and went to Kansas City. And did he win that title? No, but good overall career, just under 200 homers. But he was not a defensive catcher. And in my eyes, if you're not a presence on a defensive end, you're not in. You have to hit 3,500 hits. Well, no, I'm sorry, but you have to get to the 3,000 plus for me to say yes on Whitelaw. But no, I'm saying no on Whitelaw. Sedelis, I thought he was a fringe Hall of Famer, and then he kind of. I wish he had more time. I don't know. I thought he had a good run in Seattle, thinking that, or early in Seattle when he was like 30, his age 31 season. I'm like, wow, if he keeps this up, he's gonna be a Hall of Famer because he was batting like he had like a lifetime average of like 310 maybe at the time. He was looking really good, and then he kind of dipped a little bit. But then I'm thinking like, okay, he's a catcher. He was a good defensive player. I don't know. I struggle on this one. I said no, but next year I might say yes. I think Sedelis is like right there. He's a fringe guy.
Looked back at
Whitelaw, no. Sedelis, fringe.
And I look at our first 2 guys in were Gamora and Jarmel. And these are guys who couldn't hit 2,000 hits, just for the record. Their OPS was right around 800, and their caught stealing percentages are 27 and 31. And then I go up and look at Hank Eldred, who was only elected about 15 seasons ago, 13. His OPS was 756, 2,100 hits, 32% caught stealing. And I start thinking, aren't Whitelaw and Sedelis better than all 3 of those guys? I almost want to say yes. And these were probably the 2 hardest guys for me to figure out on the ballot. I have like Sedelis is a guy that still kind of pisses me off because I gave up on him and basically said, here, Cadmus, you take him. And then he became a fucking monster. And then Whitelaw just kind of ground out a really long, impressive career in our file.
Yeah, tell 2 different stories here.
Just for the record, Whitelaw's 2,800 hits would be the most in our Hall of Fame for catchers. More than DeMichael Thomas, more than anybody else.
You might have sold me.
A really hard time. I think next year I vote them both in.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of where I'm at. Or if I vote one of them in, it's
like
going to be Whitelaw.
Here's the other thing about Whitelaw. He was always forgotten about. He just grinded out a career that you'll forget about tomorrow.
Right.
But somehow he had 2,800 hits as a catcher.
Yeah.
He wasn't like an impact bat. He wasn't an impact player. He was always batting 7th or 8th.
I just went back to make sure that Whitelaw actually has 2,800. I am not convinced that's real. Like that, he didn't seem like he was that kind of a catcher. He brought
some good years in Toronto.
A bunch to get Gabriel Gamora in, and yeah, he did. But at this point, when those guys are in the Hall of Fame, I can't look at Neil Whitelaw and say you're not a Hall of Famer when you are better than 3 of the 9 catchers in the Hall of Fame. So I guess I just changed my mind as we were talking. I think next year I'm putting Whitelaw in, and then I'll have to really chew on Sedelis.
Mm.
Those two are tough. They're real tough.
See. Here's the Sedelis was the more impactful bat when he was in his prime. Sedelis was the man.
Sedelis was a borderline MVP candidate.
Yeah. Yes.
A couple years.
Yes. In Colorado, and actually, when you say you give up on Sedelis, we almost made a deal before you got the CAD. But yeah, Sedelis was a man for like 7-8 years.
Yeah, 2068 in Colorado, a 900 OPS from a catcher. You're in the MVP conversation. And then in Seattle in 2073, same thing. But maybe you think differently, but I don't remember Sedelis being a high-end defensive catcher.
No, I thought he was, but he's right on line with Whitelaw. I think he looked like a great defensive catcher just by looking at vitals, but his numbers doesn't really, stand out. I think he's like 27%.
I don't know. Like when I was thinking about doing this, my first thought was talking about these two because I think they're the most difficult two to figure out. Now, don't get me wrong here. When you look at our file last year, Jeff Hainsworth threw out 44% of the runners because Jeff Hainsworth might be Jesus, but everybody else is like 30%. So 30% is maybe not as bad as we think. I think I'm talking
that's probably
catchers making the Hall of Fame next year. Romani's needs to go in the Hall of Fame.
He needs to go in. I thought it was a first. See, when you asked me the question, is David Horde a first ballot? I'm kind of. I thought Romanis is your first ballot. I thought that was.
I think they should have both gone in together.
Probably.
They both were on the ballot last year, and they both didn't get in, and I don't understand how.
I don't know how Romanis didn't make it in. He was a 20 home run machine. Having one error a year.
Right. I mean, let's put it this way. I think when I think of like power hitting shortstops in our file, I think about Danny Dudding, who was the White Sox shortstop for a long time for JHC. And he hit 338 home runs. Romani's almost hit 400. And he was an elite fielder. Yeah, I know his OPS might not look great, and I know his batting average might be a little bit unsightly, but look past that. You will take a 700 OPS and 400 home runs from a guy who was an elite defensive shortstop. He should be in.
Yeah, I think Romanis should be in. I think he sets the bar for other shortstops that will, creep behind him, like Wendell Birch, for instance. He doesn't even compare to Romanis. Other guys, speaking of, like Kuhlman, I think is one of them. I know he's not I think he's still like 28, 29 or something like that. But
guys in the current file?
Yeah, whatever it is, Romanis is going to set the bar for shortstops as a power hitting, slick fielding shortstop. And it's a very rare combination in this league.
Kind of look at it like this. Kent Monroe had a stretch there where he was a really elite player in this file.
Yep. Solely
Solely because he was a freak with the glove and could hit a little bit for you. And Romani's hit a little bit for a lot of guys for a long time.
Consistently. He was counted upon.
You weren't going to put him as your cleanup hitter or anything, but you were going to hit him 6th or 7th, count on about 25 home runs from him, and he would basically never commit an error.
Yep, and be completely satisfied with what you're getting out of your shortstop.
Right. I mean, I guess I would invoke the vote him in for Ozzie Smith, like the Ozzie Smith vote. Like he earned it with his glove.
Except he hit 394 more homers than Ozzie Smith.
Right. He could put the ball over the fence and catch everything within the vicinity of him. He's kind of like what's the name of the guy in Los Angeles in real life? Simmons?
Yeah. Probably more
power. Hitting like a power hitting Simmons. That's what he is. There's
fair
value.
Yeah, about 700 OPS. Elite.
I guess this is where I factor Mogul in too, because Mogul really emphasizes up the middle defense. So if you have an elite up the middle defender, that is even more value in Mogul than it does in real life.
Winning player.
Yeah.
Why is Chris Termel on the ballot?
Because he stole how many bags did he steal? 700. He's in the top 10 all time in stolen bases. That's why he's on there.
I got nothing.
You know,
to say
everything else about him screams vote no, and it does. You should vote no. But he's a top 10 all time base stealer. That's why he gets one season to be voted no and summarily dismissed.
I think he wasn't an efficient base stealer though. Look how many bags he lost on.
That's true. He wasn't an efficient base stealer, that's for sure.
Yeah, I don't know.
Enough to make him to be an inefficient base stealer.
And I think he was
pretty effing efficient if you're him.
If he gets 1%, I would have to slap somebody. I don't know.
Well, let me tell you. I'll tell you if anybody's voted for him so far.
That's a hard no.
But somebody has voted for him. Does that make you feel bad?
It wants me to puke. We gotta bring this back. We gotta talk about the 1970s team, and I'm sure we're gonna include some of these guys, but we gotta get an all 70s team put together.
Right now, I'm just kind of looking at where our ballots are. I would say so far the league is putting in the guys we've talked about and keeping out the guys we have kind of shunned.
Who's the one that's trending? The one that can surprise you a little bit? Is it Whitelaw?
You mean as far as getting in or not getting in?
Getting in, or both.
Is right on the edge.
I would say Whitelaw is your surprise in. I would say Stanley is your surprise, like sleeper, being out.
Stanley has had a little push, but just to give you guys context, last year Aaron Stanley, the first 12 people voted him in, and then after that he lost his 75%. So I don't know what happened after that, but he was 100% in for the first half of the ballots that came in, and then everybody else voted no. So right now he's on the fringe, and Whitelaw's on the fringe. Most of the other guys that are going in have a pretty comfy margin.
Man,
Romani's and Horn are probably a vote away from being in trouble, but
really, they're struggling, huh? God,
yeah,
it's tough.
Jason's saying that Whitelaw's hits are wrong. Let me check that out. Maybe they are wrong.
Uh-oh, breaking news.
Yeah, they are 1,800, not 2,800.
Whoa.
It's a rather large difference.
That's a goof.
Well, remember when I said that I couldn't believe they were 2,800? I don't know how I missed that for a second. So the ballot is now fixed. It is now 1,800 hits, which is that equation.
Wow. Well,
now I might put Sedelli's in here.
That went from like Fringe Hall of Famer to have fun with retirement, sir. Because you're not going to make the Hall of Fame. Good career. He's not a Hall. Wow. 18-19.
That was obviously an oversight on my part. But yeah,
For a second, I'm like, he almost had 3,000 hits, this motherfucker.
Well, that's why I said too. That seemed. Basically, people are bringing take him off the list. If Whitelaw gets over 75%, I will not. I'm basically going to reset things for him next year. He won't get in the Hall of Fame, and I'll just scratch that.
No, it's fair because he does compare to Sedellis. He does compare, but Sedellis is the better pick.
And this year didn't happen for Whitelaw because. So I think that's a rather large move.
Well, if he gets in by the vote, it's fair that you could take him off the Hall of Fame list if he gets 75%.
Consider Whitelaw a non-factor this year.
Yeah, he's a non-factor. Sedellis is a better catcher.
Yeah, I think. Congrats to Stang, and congrats to you for guiding Stang to his first world title.
Yeah, I was happy to do it for him. I'm
For
sure
him.
he was happy to see that.
He's not blowing that. I'm surprised Stang didn't celebrate his victory by blowing his team up and trading them all for draft picks.
Yeah, he's got no prospects, but you're gonna get that that energy to be like, oh, let's do it again, and then probably fall on your face. But no, congrats to him. It was a team we've been buzzing about for years, and it was getting concerning that the window was closing. But he did it. He made some comebacks during the DS and CS, and yeah, that's
in
the
the final
playoffs for you.
Yep. Yeah. Anything else you would like to chat about?
Kent Monroe should stop being dangled by Mizzy. He's a good player, but he's ruining his image.
I think I put Mizzy on ignore because I'm no longer a GM and I no longer care about what he shops. So I think I've just ignored him.
Oh man. Well, since we're at the back end and probably don't want to talk about do you want to talk about the off season and teams that could emerge, or do you want to just wrap it up?
I'll be honest. I haven't paid that close of attention because obviously I flew through the file last night to get everything set. I don't really know.
Right.
I didn't have free agency. So
we'll let the off season pass. We'll come back to it maybe during draft time. But
if you want, I think Minnesota is a team to watch out for next year. I think Kansas City will still be in the conversation. Detroit will still be in the conversation. New York is still in the conversation. Houston, we'll have to be curious what TT does this offseason.
Yeah, I think Houston's a good, that's a buzz team you want to look out for because they might make a splash here and there.
Here's my sleeper. I wonder if it's not
this.
SXR's year to take a big jump. I think the Dodgers are a team to watch out for.
I was looking at him too to make a big splash.
Does anybody want to face Valdez and Cranston in a playoff series? Because I sure as hell wouldn't. Those two guys.
This might ruffle some feathers. Florida. I think they're going to make a couple moves. They're starting to turn that franchise around, picking some players here and there. I think they have some tools to make some moves, to do a little bit of maneuvering. I think 2082 is the start of their winning ways, if you want to call it that. So I'm going to say Florida.
I think I see the pitching staff, but the hitting is a ways off yet for me to think about Florida. I really think the Dodgers might be a big bat away from being a World Series contender.
That's hot.
Up the middle, they have Leon Morin and Mark Overstreet. That is a vicious second base shortstop combination. Or second base.
Spicy.
I guess Overstreet might be a third baseman. But Williamson's a hell of a shortstop. I mean, his defense with those three guys is going to be crazy. If he can get himself a bopper for DH or first base or somewhere else, that could be a real team to watch out for. Or if he puts a third.
I agree with you. It's just tough division. It's a tough division. Yeah, leapfrog. San Diego, San Francisco, Colorado's making some noise in the free agency world.
No, it definitely is because Maddie's got Resendez, and I would say Resendez is probably the best player in that division, and that is saying something.
He might be the best player in the league right now.
And that's a hell of a thing to overcome. Arizona's got Dalzell, which might be the second best player in that division. But
yeah, no, that's a power. I almost said power conference, like it's college football. That's a power division for sure. And going back to San Diego, I just want to see one big splash to see what Maddie can do because you got Requendez, you got Bird. Galvi's been kind of mediocre, but he's all right. But you got this guy Brandon Tinker, who I think could jump to become that ace. Like this is a good time for San Diego, but like the window's he's like in a weird spot, so he might make.
It's the first time I've seen Tinker. He's an interesting player.
Oh, Tinker's gonna be really good. it's gonna be really
Burbage
good.
is a favorite of mine. I really like Burbage. He's a good player. That was one of those guys when Maddie took him, I was like, you motherfucker. Damn it.
Yeah. So I see Rikenda, I see Bird, I see Jones, I see Galvey. You still
There's
got a good
fan.
shortstop in Cake, who can. He hasn't been as good since his early days, but he's still a good running shortstop.
And see,
Yeah,
though,
San
that
Diego's a
Maddie,
team. They made the World Series a couple years ago. So not really sleeping on anyone, but
their window
I'm curious to see what they can do.
their window's probably closing a little bit because they're starting to lose
It is closer. Yep. 100%.
So I know Maddie's shopping picks and things around to kind of make a couple big upgrades. I mean, if he finds that shortstop he's looking for or another big bat to put in there with those two outfielders, I would not be shocked if he won that division next year.
I see Arizona all the way. They're
Simon
they got
Wickman
power. They got the runners. They got the ace. They got the young closer coming up.
Obviously I love the D-backs, but they probably are still a year away from being as good as they can be. I just noticed that Quinn Thies got a little jump, huh? But your catcher that you traded to the Diamondbacks, I hadn't even looked at that roster in a while. So
Quinn Thies.
Yeah, there's the D-backs are still a little ways away, and I know Maddie's pushing in. I think he's got a shot to take that division, but SXR, like I said, his infield is so good, and those top two pitchers in his rotation are so good. It's going to be tough.
Yeah, Cranston, Valdez.
The thing I would do
3. Carney, I don't like him, but he could give you something.
To
Not
Jason
really.
out there. Jason, it might be time for you to see the writing on the wall and start shopping some big names you've got.
And he's got some big names too. Hunter could get somewhere. He can get something out of Hunter. Hadelman's
I don't know.
Big.
Derek Moore could get him a draft class probably.
Sure, but I'm saying we could both agree that he's got the tools to kind of reset and kind of put his stamp on the team.
Yeah, I think now's the time to do it because Arizona and Los Angeles are not going anywhere. Maddie's not going anywhere for probably a season or two. I know he tried to rebuild last year, but I could see him pushing for a couple more years. And the Giants just don't have the firepower to win that division. Not right now. And
sorry, go on.
Yeah, and if you wait, you might not be able to get as much for a guy like Brian Kennedy or Derek Moore. So this is probably the time to start shopping.
Yeah, I think Hadelman, Moore, Hunter. Big guys you could trade. Kennedy, you could trade to someone. Someone would like him. And then you got like a former MVP and Sigalas. He's like an under the radar center fielder. You put him in a corner outfield, lefty. He's had some good numbers.
Surprise MVP guy a couple years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if we're gonna kind of just do a quick check on each division, Chicago's still probably got the Central for the little while, but their finances are starting to catch up to them a little bit.
Which plays in the hands of the Brewers. So yeah, Chicago
is something they're gonna have to think about. I noticed Sandoval dropped a little bit. He's had a couple of drops in there. Jace Moore dropped. So a couple of key players on that Chicago team are starting to age a little bit. But they're still
agent finance is something I looked at too. They definitely have a run on them, but they don't really have much room for error type thing. It's like kind of like Atlanta, where like they have a good roster, but if anything goes wrong, they're kind of not really going to take it all. I don't know because they don't have the depth. But
if Mav hears this, Mav, for the love of God, put Taralba towards the top of your lineup. Stop hitting him eighth. You're wasting.
Taralba should be a 5-tool stud at shortstop.
Should be hitting second.
He should be leading off, hitting 250, but like being a totally dynamic player. Or second.
If I had that lineup, he'd be leading off. Sandoval would hit second. Pop Warner would hit third. Ayala would hit fourth. Caulfield would hit fifth. And then who the hell cares after that? Because those 5 guys are going to kill people. That's the way.
I don't see another team contending for a
And
little
Cluett,
while.
as long as you have Cluett, Tippett, and Tanaki, they're gonna be the force to be reckoned with. Now, Cincinnati's making a push. I give them credit. Theo's putting some talent together there in Cincinnati.
He can evaluate some talent.
He's got some guys there.
Yeah, I give him credit. He's been picking up some guys with talent.
Have to see how it comes together, but there's talent there for sure.
Yeah. His next challenge would be to figure out the right combination, like the right sort of
who goes. Yeah. Who fits together.
Yeah, like how to gel a team, because he definitely finds talent. He just needs to learn how to gel a team, especially defensively, because I know defensively he always kind of puts that in the back burner sometimes. But I'm impressed with some of his draft picks over the years. And his catcher could be a stud.
Yeah,
Ponemar could be a stud.
Ponemar's a good player. If Theo hears this at all, yeah, just pay attention to defense, man, and you will be okay, because you've got the hitting talent for sure. Just put him in the right spots and make sure you field the ball.
And hell, he's got some pitchers too. I like that move with Carreras. He drafted Russ Dean. I think Russ Dean's your classic Florida pitcher, which may not work, but he was pretty impressive in 81. He looks like the guy who can give up a ton of bombs, but
I don't know how Nelson Carreras turned out as good as he did. That was a good move on his part.
Yeah, Carreras is good. I like Bots and Fearon to do some things. So they got some interesting pieces. They just got to get the right combination. So that's going to be the next challenge for him. And I think he's getting better.
Over in the East, that's a hard division. Obviously, Philadelphia is retooling. They need to.
The East, yeah.
Florida is still rising a little bit. They're not ready yet.
Yeah, hopefully they get a GM, and I know Dave is pretty new. Hopefully he stays and puts a good direction on that team.
I agree. That franchise has needed that for a long time.
Yeah. It just needs a direction. That's all.
Decker's got a great team there in New York. He's got to figure out his finances a little bit, but he's got some solid talent. And when Bo Winters is ready, he's got
solid starters. His line could be a little bit better, but I like him. Yeah,
be a factor. Peter's always going to be a factor because Peter knows what he's doing. He's got talent to spare to get what he doesn't have, so he's going to be in that conversation. And we're probably talking about Stang's last hurrah here for the next season or two, and then he's going to have to blow it up.
Yeah, I think now's the time to blow it up, honestly. He doesn't have his payroll's high. He's losing money. He doesn't have many prospects. I think you did your thing, blow it up. Blow it up. I would say blow it up. I can see
him going back for one more because the pitching staff is still good enough and young enough to take one more shot at it.
But what he needs is depth, because I remember in the playoffs, his second baseman went down, and I said, what the fuck do I do here? He has no depth. He needs some guys in the bench who can do some things and not just play the corner outfield spots.
Honestly, I think what he's going to have to do is probably deal one of those starting pitchers just to kind of free up some money to go do some other things.
Yeah, he's kind of tight. But yeah, I would say any of he's got 6 aces. He's got 6 aces. 6. And yes, I'm calling oddly
tied up in that bullpen. Like if you just look at his bullpen, he's currently paying his bullpen 21, 26, 36, 44, $53 million to his bullpen.
That's a lot.
That's more than he's paying his starting rotation, I think. It's real close. So that's a lot of money tied up in guys who you're not using as a starting pitcher, and you're just sticking them in the bullpen. At that point, I would deal those guys for draft picks and find some guys to plug into the bullpen.
Hell, I wouldn't even hate if Stang shopped around Paul Lucy, because he's the youngest, he looks the most attractive. Trade him off and get yourself 3 good players to keep this run going. Maybe. I don't know. There's a lot of options that he can do here. I just know that this window is going to fade really fast, especially on the offensive end, and you need him. but he's got the horses.
In a tough spot. I mean, I could see him going a lot of different directions, and he'd be justified to do any of them.
But before we go to another division, to the AL, I do see Florida making a little bit of a push this year. Not to say wild card or even the division or anything like that. I'm saying he might get to 80 wins, and then the next year he might get to your 90. I'm just curious to see what kind of moves Hokie will make, because I'm sure he's got something up his sleeve.
Yeah, I think they will not be a tanking bottom of the barrel team. I would agree with that.
Yeah. What you saw in the last month of last season, which is, I don't know, whatever. We could talk about that. We could talk about, his rosters at another time. But Gantz is a number one. Franklin works for him in his ballpark. I like that. Ocampa is a good underrated player. He could be a solid number two for next season and seasons to come. And I like Morales. He has a jump in him too. So
they're going to be good. They're going to be good.
They're going to be good.
My time's running short, so let's head over to the AL.
Okay, go on.
I don't think the West is going to take much conversation. Houston, right?
Houston.
Maybe if Dougie retools some of what he's doing on his offensive side and defensive side of the field, I think he could push, but he doesn't have the pitching depth to keep up with Houston.
Yeah, I think Doug is like stuck with some of his guys, some of Fred's guys. So it's like the Frug type team. It's like a lot of the old Fred players, and it's just not the right combination with what Doug's putting together. But yeah, it comes down to defense. But he's got some talent. I've always liked Oakland and what they've had. It's just they've
been a very good
combination
drafter since he came into this league.
Yeah,
he is a real talent for drafting. But like you said, they're kind of a Frankenstein right now that just doesn't work together.
Right. But yeah, Houston. I'm curious to see what Houston can do, how much noise they can make.
Yeah, I mean,
LA
Bernie Taylor is still one of my favorite players in the file. I love Bernie Taylor.
Yeah, I know.
He just doesn't. The problem with
defense.
The problem for TT is that he just doesn't have the high end pitching at this point.
No, but he's got a rotation of a bunch of threes, which works. But that rotation won't make noise in the playoffs. Probably not.
I mean, yeah, he's got Lopez maybe coming to help the offense, but he needs to find a way to upgrade the pitching staff. Otherwise, he'll win his division, but he's going to get chewed alive by the other playoffs.
But he's got some flexibility in his payroll. He's got a trending team, and he's got some players. So, now it's his GMing. What can he do to get some of the guys he needs to kind of finalize this roster?
He's got some options. The other division in the AL that's a little bit easy to talk about is probably the AL East, where it's still New York's division to lose.
Is New York.
Full-blown rebuilds.
Baltimore is in the last stages of their window. They're like San Francisco. They should just start wheeling and dealing.
Time to shed some of those good players they have.
Wheeling. They should be 0 to 60 wheeling. They got some players they can move. Pitching, offense.
I will give a shout out to the Expos. They are not that far away. Their pitching staff doesn't look great, but G's got some hitters on the way up that could be some really interesting players for him.
Yeah, G's got the full 40-man roster of underrated players, but they all work. So G's definitely a team to watch. Like you look at his roster, be like, oh, okay. But then you look at their vitals, you're like, whoa. Like a guy like Leon Nava, he looks good at 79 overall. Leary looks good at 84 overall. He's got a bunch of those guys. So he's got the pieces to do some things.
What's unusual for G this time is he's got some hitters he drafted that look like pretty interesting players, like Kevin Jensen and Joseph Woomwell is not really my style of player, but he's not bad. Parr looks like an interesting player. Giuliano looks like an interesting player in a couple years. He's got.
Zaisadou should be a.
I usually, when I think of a G team, I think of 5 guys he drafted in the first or second round that pitch, and then he just puts a bunch of scrubs in his lineup and makes it work. Whereas this time, he's got scrubs in his rotation, and he's calling up high-end offensive players. So It's going to be interesting to see how this works out for him. I really like Andy Rollwing. He's a good player. Like I like that player a lot. So,
What game am I looking at? Andy Rowling. Okay, yeah, he's a 5 tool.
yeah, he really turned out well. I remember looking at that guy in that draft and thinking, yeah, I've seen this guy before. He won't do anything particularly well, but man, did he develop well. I mean, that's a good late second round pick right there. So
Yeah.
watch out for Montreal maybe in a couple years. Not this year. They're not ready yet, but they're kind of like Florida. I think they're coming soon.
Yeah.
And then
Yankees. It's amazing that Monte Hugo turned into a 3-time Cy Young Award winner.
I don't know how
3 in a
that's
row.
possible. How many of us shit on him in that trade thinking that was a
Nope.
Florida guy that wasn't
Not me. Nope.
And
Nope.
yeah.
Nope. I was all over that one.
I was wrong on that.
I was all over that one. Oh yeah. I remember I said Monte Hugo, he's a stud. He's a top 5 pitcher in this league. And look at him now.
Not have had
he
my
is
agreement.
dominant. He's gonna be dominant for the next probably 5-6 seasons. He's probably Toledano 2.0. Probably better.
I apologize to all of the AL teams that have to deal with Sean Walker, Monte Hugo, and Kyle Farabee for the next 15 years. Sorry.
And Sam Serrata, Omar Anal.
Yeah. Omar Anal's a good player too. I forgot about him. There he is sitting in the long relief. Yeah. Good. That pitching staff might be the best 5-man rotation. Not right now, but in a couple years, that might be the best 5-man rotation we've seen in a long time.
I can't disagree with that.
And he's got some, if he could just go out and find like a real true offensive juggernaut for the middle of his lineup to go with Priestley, I don't know how anyone would beat him. Like the only reason anyone's beating him right now, in my opinion, is he's just not quite good enough offensively.
I think it's his defense that kind of hurts him too. I think his defense hurts him a little bit.
Here are all my draft picks. Who's the best hitter on the market? And stick that dude at DH.
Central, it's going to be fun again.
I mean, the White Sox are rebuilding. Cleveland should be rebuilding. And then those 3 teams at the top for at least another year, they're going to be Jeff Hainsworth is the best player in the file, period, I think.
Yep.
And then Kansas City, Mike has done kind of like the thing I was talking about with G, where he's done the reverse build. He's built an offense to win and just cobbled together a pitching staff. And that offense is legit. Berman and Smith and Shields and Rosen, they are
and Mike
3.
And Mike's going to go back to Mike ways by taking out his draft picks, getting the money to fund his expensive roster. So we're looking at the Mike of old. He's going to churn out 90, 95 win teams year after year by financing his, using his draft picks to finance his team. He's going to go back to that model.
He should be able to take another shot or 2 at a title. And then
why not? Why not?
Yeah. Then
I've said before, I think the league is wide open right now. Like Yankees aren't bulletproof. The Cubs aren't bulletproof. The Braves are definitely not bulletproof. Like these top tier teams could be beat. And I don't see that juggernaut like the Reds were. You could say, yeah, the Yankees, but like we just went over their holes. So anyone could win here. Anyone.
No, it's true. I will say, I think I'm going to go bold here. I think GB has a top 15 pick next year. I think Detroit's run is finally over.
I think GB just opened up a new bottle of whiskey after you just said something like that.
He just doesn't have the depth anymore. He's got Hainsworth, who is ridiculous. But if you look at the rest of that roster, they're hanging on by a thread at this point.
GB is very sneaky. He isn't the best drafter in the world, but he will make the deal to get the best player and keep him for 15 years. Like Cantrell, trade. Luke Cook, trade. Hainsworth, trade. Something's going to happen. I don't know what's going to happen, but GB has something up his sleeve.
Don't get me wrong. Like
he knows how to flip a team. He knows how to flip a team.
Those guys who know how to turn like water into wine around here, like Mike and G and GB are the best I've ever seen at it. You can look at their roster and go, how the fuck did these guys win 100 games? But they do it consistently enough that it's not a fluke. GB absolutely knows what he's doing. I just think he's run out of bullets. He's been running out of bullets for a long time, but I think he might finally be out of bullets.
I think he realizes that, and he might be the guy calling Baltimore. He might be calling San Francisco. He might be calling these teams that are looking to sell and taking advantage of that and reloading his roster. It just wouldn't shock me at all.
He's got Marquez and Hainsworth, who he could basically say, here's what I want, and anyone will pay that. Like, he has the guys that he could get whatever he wanted for right now. So that's just my prediction. I think this might be the year where GB he's finally out of the playoff mix.
So the big question is Minnesota or KC, because that's a hot button topic.
I talked with Minnesota a lot about that Engelbrecht deal. Like, I was kind of talking with them a little bit during that deal, and I love Dale Andrew. He's proven me wrong. He's better than I thought he was going to be. Valentine's a player I've liked for a long time. There's a couple others too, but Engelbrecht really, I think, puts them in the next tier of teams. I think they're a legit World Series team.
I think they need one more bat.
I was going to say the exact same thing. They need one more
bat. Maybe two.
I mean,
two would make me want to say World Series. I don't know. One would make me say, okay, division. I don't know. But
let me put it this way.
Beyond Engelbrecht, like, I need that second threat. McSorley is good. Yes. I need another player. Need one more.
I told
ideally two.
Minnesota behind the scenes, I'll say it out loud so everybody can hear it. I think offense wins championships. So I am always of the opinion that if you can add more to your lineup, you have a better shot to win when it comes down to the playoffs. I think Minnesota has.
I could see Minnesota making a splash in free agency.
I think they should. I think that's really where it is. They need one more elite hitter in that lineup, and I would say they are probably in the top 3 or 4 teams for the World Series odds. Right now, they're probably more like 5th or 6th. But another bat, and I think that elevates them a lot.
And I would do it quick because I would ride the coattails of Dale Andrew right now, because he's probably at the prime of his career right now. Age 26. This might be a Cy Young year.
If I'm Minnesota, I'm calling about Gene Wood in Baltimore, or I'm asking about I'm calling Oakland and saying, you know, which one of your bats can I get my hands on?
Yep.
Like Todd McDonough, or who's their shortstop that I like? I can't remember his name. Or Cold Iron as a leadoff hitter, somebody like that. Jeff Williams, the shortstop. Or I'm calling up the teams that are kind of on that fringe and saying, what can I snag from you? St. Louis has some hitters I might be calling about, like Rocky Hayes or Jason Hessen, and just see what you can get, because one of those bats could be the difference for some of these teams.
Yep. I think Sigalis would be a nice fit for a lot of these teams in San Fran.
It'll, like you said, it'll be interesting next year because it is fairly wide open. There's not a team right now that looks like the ready-made, you have no chance to beat them kind of team. If teams make the right moves to supplement their rosters right now, you could make a big jump in your odds, in my opinion.
But do it now, because in a couple of years, the Brewers will not be taking any customers. I'm not kidding.
I gotta wrap this up. My wife and kids are on their way in, so I hope you guys enjoyed the pod. Go vote in the Hall of Fame ballot, please. This is about the most interesting one we probably will ever see in our league. So go out and vote, and if you have trouble knowing who to vote for, go back and listen to the pod, because JMaine and I broke it down, and we're smarter than you, so just listen to what we had to say.
Yep, we have a total. I don't know where I'm going with this. We're smart. You're not. This was fun though. So until
we
then,
disagreed on any of our Hall of Fame picks either, did we? Like, we were pretty much in lockstep on everybody.
Yeah, and sometimes we do disagree on things, but yeah, we're pretty. I think we're pretty on par. All right. So until next time. Peace.